Okay, there you are. Let me unmute you. Hang on. Um, sorry. Oh, I don't know where the unmute is.
Oh, it's on my end.
Oh, wait. Oh, I know. Okay, I feel like I had all of this
I think, can you hear me now?
totally under control. Okay, unmute. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I've got this rosy glow. I've lit all these candles around me, so
No, that's a great way to be here. Awesome.
computer light. Hopefully, you can't see all the laundry in the background.
No, that's great.
Yeah, so I shared this on the Facebook wall, but I was really surprised when I started writing about that question, just how I've never like thought about myself as a writer, even though like the college that I went to was super writing intensive, and I've written things my whole life for various jobs. And part of it is just that my sister claimed that identity so early on in our childhood. We're 2 years apart. She's 2 years older. And she has known from the time she could speak that she was a storyteller and a writer. And she was, published at age 8 and got a creative writing degree from Cornell. And so it wasn't even something that crossed my mind as a possibility. And it wasn't like I was pining to be a writer, but it's more been that journal writing has been so important for me in my own like healing process. And so I feel like I need this, like I signed up for this course to help tell my story in a new way. But yeah, that was a real block. And the thought of like, what if I publish a book? Not that I have any ambitions to do that, but I'm open to all possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought like that would be really hard for me to publish something before her as an adult, because she's had pieces in magazines and little things here and there, but not like the novel she's been working on for 10 plus years. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that just like really was surprising to me, that her claiming that title in the family had always just like made that not even a possibility for me in my mind. She never did anything to make me feel, and I think she'd be excited to know I am doing writing, but it just, that was the narrative in my mind.
Interesting. Can I ask, was there anything useful in terms of kind of maybe not changing the story, but changing the terms that you give that story and kind of claiming your space as writer? Is it just a matter of saying it, or was it a matter of?
I think it was just realizing it and just being like, oh, yeah, she doesn't have to be the only writer. And she, again, I don't think she would be upset at me writing. She'd
No,
be,
yeah.
but I think it was just like realizing it and being like, oh, that's part of my resistance to writing and putting things out there in the world, is I'm not the writer in the family.
Yeah, which it actually makes me think I have younger sisters who are wonderful writers, and I feel like maybe I have unintentionally claimed that title in my own family. And so hearing you talk about that is useful for me to take note of, like, am I being territorial about that? I don't think I am, but it's possible that maybe they feel that way, and maybe if my intention is to let everyone around me tell their story, to remind them, like, this is not just, like, what I have to say is mine to tell, but what you have to say is yours, and I want you to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, super useful. Okay, thank you. Let me, okay. Oh, sorry. I had this all, I knew what I was doing, and then, okay, there we go. Okay, does anybody else want to um, come on? I see some of the things in the chat. Social redundancy and coming across too obvious to be important or worth someone's time. Yeah, I feel that way a lot, especially because I feel not as informed or learned as a lot of the people who are actually writing these things. So I recognize that that is definitely something that stops me, is not only will I be redundant, but I will be less useful in saying the thing that I need to say. So that's been something that I have had to work through. Let's see. Being vulnerable. how writing will fit into a career. Yes, that is definitely, maybe that's not one for everyone, but that's one for me. Jessica, I'm going to bring you on. Hang on one second and I will unmute you. Okay, 1 second. Okay, there you are. Hi, thank you for coming on. I can't hear you yet.
Oh,
There we go.
okay.
Perfect.
Okay, this is kind of scary for me, but I've had some realizations this week with our homework. And so many things that I want to do, but I don't in life in general, like for me in motherhood and in my faith or in my marriage, in writing, in creative pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. So through writing, I've realized this kind of a lot of shoulds. So a lot of shoulds regarding certainty and having things figured out, a little bit more, having more answers. And I'm not there. But I also logically know that none of us are. But I hold myself to a higher standard, and it's unrealistic. But so the journey of self-acceptance for me is like really crucial to just starting now where I am. And that gap between where I am and where I should be isn't even real, but it's the story of what I'm telling myself, and that's keeping me from writing and a lot of other things. So I think that sums it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for willing to be coming here and sharing that. I think it does go back to that quote that I put up at the first about success being an anxiety-producing word, because what the world tells us success is pretty difficult to get. And one thing that she goes on to say is, as soon as you get it, it's not something that you can hold on to, because then people ask, well, what's the next thing that you're going to do? And why don't you know more? And why weren't you more successful? And so I loved the way in that episode she goes and she kind of takes back that meaning of success and says, no, this is successful to me. And I think I'm so glad that you are in this writing course and taking like applying it across the board, because I think that is the beauty of writing, is that it would be a really boring piece of writing if we wrote backwards from what we knew. But that actual, like, entering the meadow and forest of writing and saying, I don't know what this is, and I don't know even what I know, but I'm here and I'm interested in finding out, I think is what makes writing super exciting and fun, and takes away that sense of like, I have to write this to teach someone something, but I am writing this because I'm being taught as I write it.
And that's the writing I love to read.
And I think, turns out that writing is really beautiful and great to read. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just going to go down and read these last ones. That I will not be able to live up to my creative vision, that I will not be able to execute my ways in a way that they're excellent enough to be the literature I want them to be. I'm glad you brought that up. I feel like that is definitely something. It's funny because I see my kids being so frustrated. I see these huge visions in their head, and they articulate them to me, and I think they're wonderful and great. And as soon as they get going and they realize it's not going to be the thing they had in their mind, they're super frustrated and mad. And I always tell them, like, it doesn't matter. The thing that you're doing is the most important. And that's the thing that people want to see, especially like when they're doing drawings and things and they're mad that it's not like photorealistic. I always tell them, like, that's not what people want to see. If they wanted to see that, they would take a picture, or your marks make it the most interesting. And it's really easy to say that to children when we see them doing it, but it's really something hard to say to myself. So yeah yeah, I think it seems like, yes, coming up again, the fear of saying the same thing that has already been said by so many, and so much better. If anybody wants to come on and talk about that, I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. Yes, Kat, I'm bringing you on. Hang on. I will unmute you. So hang on 1 second.
Hi.
Hey, girl. Yeah, I can hear you.
So when I wrote that fear, that's kind of been what's been brewing in my mind since I watched last week's class. And it's funny that I can say that, and that can be this fear that I hold inside of me so strongly, because when I see other people saying it and they're like echoing that sentiment that I have, I'm like, no, but I want to hear your redundant story, and I want to hear what you have to say that's like the same thing we've been hearing. And I think, isn't that why we seek like a novel or an article or whatever it is? I think we are seeking commonality, and we're seeking like some kind of mirror of our own human experience. And so even though, I mean, it's like every time you watch like the Huggies commercial where like the toddler's taking its first steps, and you always like get a little tear. But I mean, it's like every human on the planet has been through that, and yet it still like hits us in the heart. And so I don't know. I love that like I can express a personal fear, and then to have somebody else say pretty much verbatim the same thing that I'm saying, or to just say, me too. And I'm like, no, but don't feel that way. And I can suddenly see outside of my own body and my own brain, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I hope that, and that's why I think this part of the class is so important, to recognize that we are not doing this all in a box. And well, oftentimes we are, but those fears and things that we don't verbalize very often are so similar to so many of us. And I think probably across the board, people would say this. I think like really famous writers would probably say the same thing.
Yeah.
Have you had any insight into like grabbing that fear and setting it aside?
I think that like your visualization exercises really, really help me, just because any sort of like mindfulness or meditation that I do in any part of my life is really helpful to like ground me in my true self. And I think that's where all of our power lies. And I think that's what we're all here trying to do, is like express who we truly are, whether we show that to somebody or it is just ours to tell and we keep that private. I think we're trying to come from such a real, raw, true place, and we're trying to like sort through, you know, the fodder, and that's what's so scary, is just how real it's coming down to be. And so the visualization exercises that you give us when we like excuse the fears, mine kind of came up in the way that you also asked if anybody specific came to mind, that, you know, like a specific person came to mind that we were like afraid of reading or writing or whatever. And so in my visualization, it was like everyone was just like hovering over me. And I was like, y'all got to go, you know, and I had to like escort them out the room. And the woman who took them away was the woman from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. You know, there's no basement in the Alamo. Yeah, she like escorted them out. And so it was like the most fantastic mission. But I'm just saying, like, I think that when you commit to getting real and to letting yourself like be exposed in that way, then you stop wasting energy. I just want to read something to you that you said last week that I wrote down.
Sure.
You were talking about the tech that was frustrating you. Mm-hmm. And you said, I put a lot of energy into feeling that way. Mm-hmm. And I think we're all just sitting here discovering how much energy we've wasted on the fear that's just like a whirlpool.
Yeah. When I was listening to something this week, a podcast where the woman talked about this idea that so many of our emotions are habitual, mm-hmm. and that we go back to the same emotions just out of habit.
Right.
I think that visualization part of it is just like knocking ourselves out of it for a minute and not having to feel angry, but just saying like, you guys have to go. Like I can't continue in this habit because it's not useful. Oh, the podcast, sorry, I should have written it down, mention it. I'm sure so many people know her, The Allison Show. And which one was it? I want to say the one about anxiety. It's super useful. She's so wonderful all across the board. But that idea really hit me. And I think, especially when we get into the habit of writing, having our first habit be fear cannot produce what we need it to produce. So
because that's not who we truly are. Our fears are like a byproduct of things, but that's not who we truly are. We aren't our fear. That's like keeping us from being who we truly are.
Yeah. Awesome. Also, I need to say, Kat and I were in a creative, I'm pretty sure we were in that same class.
I think so.
A creative writing class together in high school. Yeah. And I used to get so nervous when we had to read our pieces out loud that I would cry. And then
I totally have sweaty pits right now just being on camera.
One time I totally thought, everyone in the class thought that I was reading about like a love of my, like a boyfriend or something, because I was so nervous and crying, but I was just nervous. Anyway, so that was my fear coming out full force. But anyway, Kate, thank you so much for being on here. Okay. Thank you guys. And a lot of interesting, useful things coming out. Okay, so continue writing in the chat if you need, but we're gonna move on a little bit and keep doing this. This work really is super important. So I this will be the last question, then we're going to get to some actual writing tonight. But I'm curious if you guys did do the prompt last week, kind of the homework where you sat down and wrote for 25 minutes of it in this very moment writing, and you didn't do anything else. You've done the work of excusing the fears and sending them on their way. Did anyone do something that was helpful or useful, or is there anything that you would repeat the next time you sit down to write? So again, in the chat or raise your hand if something really great worked. And hang on, I'm going to see if I have that question. I can't remember if I put it on a slide. Let me see. Oh, nope, I did not. Okay. Okay, so is there anything that you would repeat the next time you sit down to write, or did you have a useful experience in any way if you did that? And if you weren't able to do the actual homework of the 25 minutes, even like the 10-minute writing. Let's see. Sabrina. Okay. Sabrina had a really hard time with it, which is funny because I've been writing morning pages for months. I had to just sit with the anxiety and not look at the clock. I just kept writing whatever was coming up. Sabrina, that's very brave, because that's a long time to sit with whatever anxiety you're feeling. Sabrina, were you able to like actually write things? And let's see, I was surprised that I was generally able to stay on the same topic throughout the 25 minutes. I did feel as though I was rambling, which is great and totally fine. Yes, and I think I feel like actually that word rambling is brought up quite a bit when I've spoken to particularly women about writing. And I think it's a really unuseful stereotype that, one, we've been given, and two, we continue to give ourselves, that what we are saying is rambling, and not allowing ourselves the space. Like, so many of us need to talk through something and work through something in order to understand what it is. Hang on one second. Thea, what? Go find Dad. Sorry, it's my daughter. So I think maybe if rambling or like carrying on, or you're feeling like you're talking too much, that might be something also to take a look at, because I bet that you are not rambling. I bet that what you're doing is really important work and is really useful. Cool. So finding a way, I wrote in the morning after a run. It's useful to recognize the times that that you're most clear. Yes, and Zen, I loved that you did not feel the need to stay on one topic or follow through. I think that's also another misconception maybe that particularly women get, is this idea that we're scatterbrained, or when we're writing, it is hard to stay on topic. But I don't think staying on a single topic makes a good writer. I just don't. Good. Ani, what a beautiful experience. Yes, and one thing I will say that I love about this in this very moment prompt is that one thing you will always, always, always have with you is your body. And I feel like in talking about being redundant and saying things that people have always said, I will always read something that someone has written about their body. I feel like the more, the better for me, because it makes my relationship to my body so much better and stronger and more clear. And for so long, there were not stories told about bodies like mine. Not just about mine. There are so many women whose bodies do not get their stories told. Mine is probably the least of those, actually. But just in terms of, I'm thinking about like growing up and not being super skinny, not being like the ultimate babe, and feeling like that's what I needed to be. And so I do love that exercise, because so often, like Ani said, she looked down at her full belly after dinner and started writing about that. And I think sometimes we bypass completely what is directly with us and around us and maybe most important to us in some way, and that is our body. So I would suggest, if you ever sit down to write and don't know what to write, think of that in this very moment exercise and talk to your body and say, yeah, like Laura's saying, that it came back to her. It comes back to me so often. And I just think that those are the stories that will never be plentiful enough. I've read books and books of essays on the body, and memoirs on the body. Roxane Gay's Hunger. Just so many books about bodies and women's bodies. So that's my plug for that. Yes, and Joe, yes, I think so many of us do also spend a lot of time up here, and particularly when it comes to writing, like looking outward really quickly and feeling like whatever we have to say from here is most useful. But yes, I would challenge you guys to at least do one writing. Actually, maybe that's what we'll do. Yeah, that is, I've been playing around with all sorts of different prompts, and I couldn't come up with the right one. So this is the right one. We are going to spend, we're going to do another free write. And I want, just for this time, we're going to do in this very moment again, and it's going to be 0 distractions. You just have to keep writing. It can be a list. It can be a narrative that comes up. It can be just words. But I want you to write about something about your body. It doesn't have to be how you love your body. It doesn't have to be about body acceptance, but just really listen to it. It could be about your finger, or your fingernail, or your haircut, your period, sex. It could be any of those things. But I'm going to put my timer for 10 minutes. And I want us to do, in this very moment, free write about our bodies. So, and let it just be gentle with yourself, be kind, and I know it's hard to do, but try not to have expectations about what this needs to be in the end, or what this needs to teach anyone. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my video. I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes, and then we can all come back together. Okay, so good luck. I'm not going to put on music or anything either, because I know it distracts some people. So hopefully it's quiet where you're at, and I will be back in 10 minutes. Okay, finish your last sentence. And sorry, my timer's gonna go off. Oh, it didn't, but that was 10 minutes. Okay, that was 10 minutes. So go ahead and finish what you were saying. Hopefully that was useful. I did it too. I have to admit, sometimes when I'm teaching these, I have to excuse myself from doing the actual work of writing because it is hard. It's always going to be hard to start. But it feels really important to me if I'm asking other people to do this, that I do it also. So real quick, we're going to move on to some questions, but is there anything anybody wants to share? Anything that was useful or surprising about doing that in this very moment writing? Okay. So we're going to answer a couple of questions in succession, and I feel like it's really important to answer these questions directly after you've had the experience of writing something, and maybe writing something that was difficult or very personal. So we're going to jump right into those questions, and I hope that's okay. So let me share the first one, and we'll just spend we'll do 2 minutes on each of these questions. And these are actually ones that I want us to come back and discuss. So if you'll keep that in mind as we come back, in part because I think this idea of the Me Too of this is pretty important and pretty useful to see that it's not just you, likely, that feels a lot of these things. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the first question. Okay, not that one. Okay, here it is. Pick the most critical and loudest member of your perceived audience and describe them. So I know we've talked about fears in general, but I think a lot of our fears, as are coming up today, and some of the things that stop us from writing and doing our best work, is the fear of this perceived audience. So I think it's useful to get to know them. So pick the loudest, most critical member and describe them. What are they saying about your work, and what are they critical of? So take 2 minutes and do that, and then we will come back and discuss. Okay, just 30 more seconds. Okay, and then go ahead and finish that sentence you are on. there it is. Okay, so come back here. And hopefully that was a useful thing to do directly after having written. Maybe a hard thing, but important. So I will say mine to get us started off. So mine, I feel like my most critical member of my perceived audience, which is funny because they're not even very often part of my audience. I always picture the editors behind desks of journals that I would love to be published in and looking at my stuff and like tossing it aside and saying, what a joke, and I think I heard at one point in my life, this term, which has not been useful to me, and I don't even think is true or probably useful to anyone. But I heard the term, or I heard this idea that academic writers called poets and writers who are not directly involved in academia, and were still trying to get published and doing whatever, they call them stroller pushers. And it was just a little one-off. I don't even know where I heard it, but that title and that term has followed me around, and I feel like the people who would say that term are my most critical audience members. Um, so, does anyone else want to share, or will you share in the chat who you recognized? Yeah, that term is the worst, and I feel like it's said by some like stupid guy that was like so far up in the ivory tower that he didn't even know what's going on. Anyway, yes, not useful, and wish I'd never heard it. What else? Who are your guys' most critical members of your perceived audience? And you're welcome to come on camera also if it's useful. Indifferent, yes. Snooty and snobby. They have given my work a cursory reading and they have not spent much time with it. Yes, for sure. They just don't care. They recommend my work to no one and don't believe it's useful or interesting to discuss. A stern mother figure who doesn't want me to embarrass myself. Interesting. She censors me by saying I'm being too serious. That is one, actually. I feel like sometimes I am doing a disservice by maybe being too serious, which is a weird thing. So she values modesty and staying humble and doesn't want you to show off or take yourself too seriously. So good. Not good, but so good to recognize. The fear of being seen or taking up too much space. Natalie, mine is someone very supportive of me, but who often suggests I should not talk about complicated feelings because they will reflect poorly on me. Oh, you guys, these are such important things, hopefully important and useful to recognize. It's really helpful to me when I actually sit down and have to verbalize these things and look them in the face and say, who are you and what are you? And are you useful to me in any way? The idea of oversharing, which again, I think is important to notice, these ideas of like stereotypes that are not serving us, and particularly as women and as writers. This idea of oversharing, of being too complicated, of showing off. These are all things that I think we really need to heal from. And I think taking control of our writing and really saying like, nope, I'm not any of these things. These things are mine to tell, and I will tell them the way I want to tell them without apology, is a really, really important thing. Oh, great. Someone who just wants to change what I've written, even with the intention of wanting to make it better. Yes. Yeah, that's surprising. It seems like a lot of us are concerned or feel like the critics are concerned about us being too serious, which is probably a sign that we need to write those serious things. Um, Yeah, and that's okay. Yeah, these things, somebody said they're sadly, in my head, my husband would be the most critical. These do not have to reflect specifically on the person. It does not mean that that's who or what they are. It just means in your head, that's what's happening. And it's important to notice that. Um, yeah, someone who gets paid to think critically. Um, yeah, and sometimes recognizing that and saying, no, thank you. Um, yeah, too self-indulgent. I think that's another stereotype that we carry around. Of, yeah, talking about our feelings, talking about the things that are important are too self-indulgent. I know I feel that a lot actually with my own writing. Okay, thank you guys for sharing these and for taking the time to write them out. I think hopefully it's useful to you guys to see them written. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, I know. I think women in general, yes. Yeah, I think Mormonism. Um, I don't know. I think a few of us here are, um, but yes, I think for sure it is a definite problem. Um, yeah, I won't get into it, but yeah, I think that it is really important to not allow ourselves to be silenced by the fears that we are um, given. And yeah, we can chat more on that later, but yeah, I think it is important to notice. I don't think it's just a religious thing. I think religion can play into it, but I think as women in general, it's definitely a thing. Okay, so the next question that I want us to discuss, yes, generational as well. Yes, there are a lot of things that go into this. STEM, yes. Sorry, I'm just reading these. Yeah, STEM people as being critical audience members. What is your product? What value does it add to the world? What problem does it fix? Yeah, those are very serious things. Okay, so I'm going to pull up this next question. Where is it? Okay. And we'll just spend 2 minutes on this one. Okay, we're going to skip that. So now I want you to pick the kindest, most supportive member from your audience and describe them. What do they have to say about your work? What do they love about your work? Why might this audience member be endeared to your work and your story? So spend 2 minutes writing that, and we will come back and talk about it. really fast. Okay, finish. There we go. Okay, so finish your sentence. Okay, and just real quick, just write in the chat, who is it that came up for you? Who's your most supportive audience member? And why are they endeared to your story? Why do they care? How are they supportive? Yes, Zina, that is a really good future self. So great. That's great. The kernel of gut punching truth that is deep down in you. That is a wise future self. Okay, I'll say mine. Mine is my mom, who is like beyond pleased with everything that I do. My husband and I always laugh at a phrase that my mom once said. I forget what I'd done. But my mom just typed on the Instagram comment, hooray for you and hooray for all of us. And I think that she was 100% sincere, that she felt like hooray for all of us. Great. Good friends. Yes. I know, however, that writing to please them means not telling my own story. The most supportive person is the one that insists I find my own voice. Yes. So yes, I do want to keep writing in here, but I want to bring up one other thing. And just a question. So it sounds like this can vary. This is not the case for everyone. It sounds like in Zina's case, a future self who is encouraging in the right ways, and maybe this has everything to do with it being you, and not anyone outside of you. But is this support something that unnecessarily drives your work just as much as the criticism might? Are you writing to please this person at the expense of being honest? So it sounds like what Natalie just mentioned that may be the case. In some cases, I know it's happened for me that because I write a lot about family and I write about, like even particularly right now, I've been writing a lot about my mom's mom. So my grandma, who I never met because she passed away when my mom was young. I think a lot about how my mom will receive that writing and what she will do with it. And while it is important to be considerate and to be to think about her in some way, it does not have to drive the way that I tell that story. Yeah. Is anyone willing to talk about that idea on camera, this idea that maybe our most supportive audience member is also inhibiting or changing our writing just as much as the criticism does? Or do you feel like that is not true? Okay, Megan, I'll bring you on, and then Joe. So hang on 1 second. And then hang on and I will unmute you. Let's see, sorry. Okay, there you are. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
So I was thinking about it, and it really, for me, it really just depends on who will actually be reading my writing, because I can think about my closest friends who accept me wholeheartedly and support me no matter what. And then I can think about my husband, who will do the same thing. but with writing, it's different, and he likes to read it and try and make things a little bit better. He's an engineer, so he likes to fix things, because that's just his mindset. So it's not he's not trying to be mean, but I would definitely edit what I was writing depending on who would actually read it.
Okay. Yeah, and that seems like an important thing to recognize going into it, and to be able to stand your ground and do it kindly, like have it separated from your relationship to him, his love for you, his acceptance of you. And you learn this in workshops all the time. Like in my MFA, there are certain people that I just say, thank you for that advice. In my head, I say this, thank you for that. I will not be taking any of that advice because it's not what is useful to me, and it's not helping me to tell the thing that I need to tell. And so I think it is really important to be able to disconnect in some way from whatever that person's either love of what you're doing or criticism of what you're doing is. Yeah, Erin, do you have any further thoughts on how if you've been able to do that? Or
sorry, I have this computer on my lap. So yes, I think the hard thing there is it just comes back to the vulnerability of not knowing if I would even want to share what I've written. I mean, I feel like I could accept that and be fine, but I feel like having to create a boundary of having the conversation, especially having a conversation of, oh, I'm not looking for criticism. I just wanted to share this. But I don't know. It's hard because I feel like I'd also I value because I do want to become better. It's just finding the balance.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe there's a right time also to do that. Like I would say during this course, do not share it with anyone. Like let it be yours and let it go under the bed if it needs. And just, I think it is a really useful exercise of just letting things be for ourselves. And then when you're ready, sometimes I need to do this because sometimes I write something and then I feel like, oh, my husband's usually pretty nice. I'll go share it with him. Or like I think of a friend that I immediately want to send it to. But sometimes I have to ask myself why I'm doing that. And I need to step back and say, is it just because I'm looking for validation? Is it because I think that this person will help me in being honest and making it better? Because I think obviously feedback is really important, but I think asking yourself why, putting up those boundaries and then just sometimes not doing that. Just like as women, taking something for ourselves and saying, nope, this is not, you don't even get to read this. Like for now, this is just for me. So yeah, okay, thank you for sharing. Okay, I'm gonna bring Joe. There you are. And then hang on 1 second and I will unmute you. Okay.
So you basically just said what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
When you put that question up, I just got this, like, it felt like a gut punch because I just felt totally exposed. And in fact, I was writing the question down and you took it away and I was like, no, I need that.
Oh, it's in the worksheet.
Oh, good. Because I feel like I'm totally doing that. Like just in my writing and like on like social media posts, I'm just looking for the pat on the back. I'm just writing to my like-minded friends so that they will say, yeah, Joe, you're right. Good job. And that is totally inhibiting my writing. I think it's being dishonest in a different way. It's not sugarcoating, but yeah, just not writing authentically.
Yeah.
For a different reason.
Yeah, and it is a hard one to look in the face and say, that is me. Like it's not a fun thing to always recognize. But I think it is such an important thing to be vulnerable and to be humble enough to say like, yeah, like I have a better story to tell than the one I'm telling, and maybe everyone won't like it.
Oh, that is hard. That sounds so scary.
Yeah, that is not a fun thing to feel. but I will say, when I have written those things, the reaction more often than not is also a Me Too. Um, when I'm not looking for the Me Too, and when I'm just writing these things for myself, um, I feel like the world is pretty good at recognizing authenticity. Um, and I feel like sometimes it is something that lacks in the world. That it is hard to sift through. Somebody was saying, I feel like it's sifting through a lot of stuff to get there. So yeah, thank you for being vulnerable and willing to say that that is a hard question to hear. I think it is for me, for sure. So yes, keep going.
Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to come on and talk about? Actually, well, I feel like the person who I would not say to change is Zynus, the one who Zyna mentioned, um, her future self encouraging her. Zyna, I wonder, would you be willing to come on and maybe talk just for a second about how you um, either got to know or were able to um, like how you're in touch with that future self, because I feel like truly that probably is the only one. Okay, yes, I see you raise your hand, so I'm taking that as a yes. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna, and then let me unmute you over here. Okay, whoops. Oh, oh, whoops. Okay, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, awesome.
Okay. I don't want people to think that I don't have those voices, because like when people started saying like, oh yeah, these people, I think I do have a chorus of people who I want to please, who I want to have as my best supporters, and those are the ones that inhibit my writing. But when I really like thought about who's my best supporter, that inner wise woman, that older self came forward. And I first encountered her through a book which I know you've read and I would recommend to anyone, called Playing Big by Tara Moore. And she leads you on a meditation where you go and meet your future self. And I did that. It's probably been 3 years now since I did that meditation for the first time. And so that's a relationship that I've been cultivating. And my inner self is me in the future. And she's also started to merge and morph with different ancestors and women in my line that I feel connected to, because I feel like this work is intergenerational. You know, when we're telling our stories, we're not just telling our story, but we're telling, we're giving voice to things that maybe people in our ancestry didn't have an opportunity to give voice to because of just all kinds of different constraints. And so I love that you're writing about your grandmother. So I feel like when I put that voice as my greatest supporter, I can't not share my story. I have to like, and it's not out of guilt. It's just like, oh, this is like a burning thing inside of me that needs to come out, if only for my own sake. But I have learned that when we, you know, like that ending, like when we write something that's really medicine for us, it becomes medicine for anyone who reads it. And whether or not they choose to take it as medicine is fine. That's their choice and how they interact with it, and different medicine for different people. You know, there's certain books that you read and it's like, oh my gosh, that was written just for me, or you feel that way. And other books that are that for someone else don't do that for you. So, you know, we need a cacophony of voices for our ancestors and for ourselves and for the next generations to come.
Yeah, and I think one thing you touched on that I think is so useful is this idea of, like, when I'm writing right now for my grandma, who I don't know, but I feel a strong connection with, it does feel very different than writing for validation for people in my immediate presence. It feels a lot more calm, and it feels like there's a lot more patience behind it, and I just feel really supported. In maybe it's looking back in time at a supporter. So if you guys are kind of if you're interested in working through this idea of like getting to know your future self better and looking to ancestors who are willing to help you write, I would definitely spend some time doing that. Thank you, Zaina, for sharing that too. And yes, the book Playing Big, I've also done that visualization. I imagine that's where this had started, has been incredibly influential and useful in my life. So thank you. I'm going to take you off now. Okay. So I just have one last question. And I think it's leading right into what we've been talking about. And then we'll be done in just a couple minutes. Let's see, where it is. Okay, so this is the last one. Okay, so I just want you to take 2 minutes and describe yourself as your audience member. What is it that you are coming to the writing to receive? What do you love or appreciate about yourself as an audience member? And in regards to this question, I do actually feel when I do my own writing that in the end, I am the one that I've written to. When I've like stripped everything down and told what is mine to tell, it turns out it is me that learns from it and either becomes better or understands something new. So just, take 2 minutes and describe yourself as audience member. What is it that you're coming to the writing to receive? And what do you love or appreciate about yourself as audience member? Okay, go ahead and finish up the sentence that you're writing. This is probably one that you will also want to spend some more time with, if not in written version, just kind of in your mind, keeping that in your mind. Okay, so finish up that sentence. This is the last thing we will do tonight, but is there anyone that would want to come on and share maybe something they learned about writing that out, or something that surprised you, or what you are here for? Megan. Oh, sorry. Okay, Megan, I'm going to bring you on. And then I will unmute you. Okay, there you are. Hi.
Hello. I'll just keep it kind of short. But for me, the more I think about kind of what I want to write is just little stories about the things I experience with my kids, with the patients I see at work. Just more for me. And so for me, that feels really safe. And if I'm writing, I love that I can be particular and critical in a way where I want it the way that I want it. But I don't feel like but once I'm done, like I'm very pleased with how the end product is.
Great. Yeah. So allowing yourself, they talk about that in that podcast as well. Just allowing yourself to say, I was successful at the thing I was trying to do because I made something and it means something to me. Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else want to come on and just maybe, or say it in the chat, what you recognize that you, as a need from your own writing, what you're hoping to get from your own writing? A form of self-care and healing, a writing to get to know myself. Yes. To receive healing. And I want to say, I want to give testimony of the ability for writing to heal. I had I had 2 kind of traumatic births with my first 2 kids. And it wasn't until I wrote them out pretty extensively that I was able to heal from them. I mean, there are still things that I'm working on healing, but in so many different scenarios, writing is a healer. Okay, yeah, one last chance if anyone wants to come on. Yeah, so the thing that I want you guys to go on and do then in this next week is I want you guys to either from the first writing that you did, or from the writing that we did, just the 10-minute writing that we did today, I want you to pick a line or an image. So you're not looking for necessarily great plot lines or story or narrative lines. You are looking for an image that carries with it an energy, and maybe something that you have no idea why. It could be a line that's really surprising to you, but I want you to take that and you're going to do another 25-minute write, just a free write, but you're going to take that as your first line. You're going to just start with whatever image that is, and you're going to follow it through. You're just going to be really curious about it. Imagine it's like the line that had kind of parted the door into this forest and this meadow. And it's really excited to let you in there, and it's saying, here you go. So you're going to follow that and see where it takes you. You do start with 25 minutes and do more if you can, if it's useful to do more. But I want you to think about in this one, I want you to have the image that when you are done with this piece, when you're done writing, whatever it turns into, it could be 100 small poems, it could be one long essay, it could be whatever you want it to be. That it doesn't matter really. But I want you to picture yourself at the end of it. You're going to do a reading, and it's going to be a great reading. You're going to dress up really nice. It's going to be in a nice theater. You're going to be on stage. But the only person in the audience is going to be you. And it's going to be you, and you're going to be excited to be there. And you're also going to be dressed up and ready and eager to support this person. It could be that future self, an older you. It could be you right now. It could be a former you. But whatever it is, you're the only one that got an invitation to this reading. So as you work through that writing, keep that in mind, and just be really gentle and curious with what you have to say. I hope this was useful thinking about audience members. All of the questions and things are on the worksheet. If you print them out and want to do more writing, there's room on the worksheets. Yeah, and as always, I'll put some stuff up in the Facebook group, and relating to this, and I feel like the conversations there have been really useful. So feel free to participate there. But otherwise, does anyone have anything else they need to get off their chest before we go? Thank you so much for participating. I'm excited for you guys. I'm actually working on some new projects that I'm really excited about also. And I'm fighting the impulse to just do them for me. I mean, to not do them for me. I'm doing them for me. But it's hard, but worth the work. So this will be available for everyone tomorrow. I can't find where to end it. That's why I keep talking. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, and thank you. Yeah, hopefully by next week I will be all unpacked, know where everything is, and my house will be under control. Okay, thank you guys. Goodbye.